Greetings, everyone. I'm Brother Dr. Jeffrey Sterling, the Surgeon General of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. It's an absolute pleasure to be here with you this evening. The times are changing, and tonight we're going to talk about stress, and we're going to talk about stress management with an eye toward young African American men, young adults in general, but particularly African American men. You may recall a time in the not too distant past, or in many parts of America, it still happens today, where it becomes necessary to have the talk. And what I mean by that is the tradition in which parents will talk to their children about how to navigate some things that provide us with some level of safety, circumstances such as how to interact with the police or deal with institutional racism, other such things that unfortunately are a normal part of the existence. However, today's generation of teens and young adults have found a way to define stress on their own terms. And we want to have a conversation this evening in which they are able to talk to us about what they perceive to be stress, how they navigate stress, and we're going to navigate that conversation in both directions, where we talk about tried and true best practices as comes to dealing with stress. I think you'll find this combination fascinating. Hopefully, it will create more understanding between the generations, and it'll be productive in terms of helping us not be on the defensive when it comes to navigating the travails of society, but will allow us to continue to be proactive and powerful in the ways in which we always have when we overcome the challenges that confront us. On behalf of our General President, Brother Lucian Metellus, Alpha's Board of Directors, and the Deputy Surgeon General, it's an absolute pleasure to present this forum to you. At this point in time, I'd like to introduce to you my good friend of over 35 years, who I can say unabashedly is the most prominent Black psychiatrist in the United States. He was famously the 100th president of the National Medical Association, and he is now the president-elect of the Black Psychiatrists of America. Our Deputy Surgeon General for Mental Health is Brother Ron Kennedy Bailey. Welcome, good evening, and I'm looking forward to this conversation, Brother Bailey.
Well, welcome. It's an honor. I thank you very, very much. Good brother Jeff Sterling as well. 35 good years of friendship, but really great years of brotherhood and alpha. Next, I'm Ron Bailey. I've been at Louisiana State LSU School of Medicine for the last 4 years, started as chair in June of 21. Spent 4 years as chair at Wake Forest, for 4 years before that, 15 and 19. We famously started off as chair at Maharamia College at HBCU for 7 years in OHO 15. One thing I've learned in these 15 years as a psychiatry department chairman, we have remarkably important issues to, I think, address in psychiatry, and those issues on steroids, I think, among African men. So I'm also very pleased this evening to have two or three outstanding young guys who are alphas, and we're going to speak about their work in psychology, in psychiatry, and emergency medicine, dealing with young African men who are up under various degrees of stress. Change the format up a little bit today. Today, we're going to spend 15, 20 minutes straight time with each individual rather than going back and forth as much. So we're going to start off with Dr. Brian Humphrey. And I'm going to give you his intro. Dr. Humphrey is a licensed PsyD, is a licensed clinical and prescribing psychologist with a deep and enduring commitment to culturally responsive care. His practice spans psychotherapy, psychological testing and evaluation, medication management, consultation services, public speaking, clinical supervision, authorship, and training. With over 2 decades of experience in medical, community, and academic settings, Dr. Brian Humphrey remains grounded in the mission to serve the marginalized, the underserved, and the culturally diverse populations that we take care of, and brothers in our own midst, with compassion, integrity, and clinical excellence. He's a recognized trailblazer in his field. He's made history as the first African man in Illinois, and one of the first in the nation to be licensed as a prescribing psychologist. His achievement underscores both his pioneering leadership and dedication expanding access to comprehensive psychological care. His work stands at the intersection of clinical practice, systemic advocacy, and education, advancing mental health equity while creating space to deliver justice, healing, and lasting transformation in every environment he works in. I've met Dr. Humphrey here of late. Very impressed with the young brother, and this really warms my heart, as Jeff says, as a 30-year practicing psychiatrist. I finished University of Texas in 1990, but Yale in 1995. You just see our field continue to be filled with young, outstanding, engaged, compassionate, persistent, highly talented young brothers in the field of mental health. So with that being said, Brian Humphrey, good to see you. Been trying to get you on the show for a minute. The guy is double booked tonight, but he's still on the show with us. His background is fine. He shows that he's an active guy in life. Good to see you, young fella. How you doing?
I'm doing well, really well. It's good to see you as well, brother. Thank you so much for the opportunity and the honor to be here. I do apologize for the background. It was a busy day today. I put my daughter into college, and so we're talking today about stress and college and so forth and young individuals. I definitely relate to that. So pleased to be able to be here to share some knowledge and you know offer any type of support that I might be able to offer.
Well, I'll say for my audience has never seen me out of Alpha attire, which all the young guys I was asking about. I said that I'm traveling there as well, sitting next to my wife, who regularly says to me that, if you go to a restaurant and there's a long line, you should stay because the chef is good and the food is good. Kind of the same
Yeah.
thing I think with you. The reality is you're busy because you are wearing a lot of hats and doing really good work. And we're proud of you for that. So let's really get right to it. One thing
Okay.
that's really great, I think, was you started off by saying that I sent some questions in. And the second one I'm gonna go to first because it really speaks, I think, vibrantly to what we're discussing today. And the issue is if stress is a huge issue in our country, in our society, and with Black men, why do we continue to talk about it like a private issue? It should be a public concern and probably one that needs a public health approach. Your thoughts?
Yeah, that's a great question, and thanks for offering that. Um, Yeah, I think that it is for many individuals when we talk about mental health in general, it can sometimes be very private. I think that in the especially in the Black community, we are trained or taught to keep things kind of inside in the house, not to share things publicly. And historically, I think that there's a lot of reasons for that as well, where we've had this historically conceal and project ourselves in a particular way as to not be perceived as vulnerable, to be taken advantage of, et cetera. So there is sometimes an association with being weak when we think about more vulnerable feelings like stress, especially for Black men, young Black men, older Black men, et cetera. That when we are to say that we are stressed typically means that something is overpowering us or something that is challenging us and very difficult to manage. And so, as leaders in our field, whether you are in school, whether you are, whatever domain you might be in life, we know that we deal with the different stressors. It's a normal physiological response that everybody experiences. But to share that and to show that can be seen as a sign of weakness, vulnerable, and then therefore people may feel that you might be taken advantage of. People might feel that you are not able to manage things. If you're at the workplace, for example, and your employer comes by and you show signs of stress, or you say that you're stressed, they may feel, am I going to get terminated? Am I going to be considered, eligible to stay here at this job? Am I going to be taken very seriously? So there is this concept of impression management, where we like to sometimes present ourselves in a way that is not always congruent with how we typically and truly feel, or what our internal realities might be. So it's a private issue, largely because we can sometimes sequester those feelings, suppress them, and repress them inside of ourselves, and then put forth a face that really represents what we want the outside to see, but may not actually be an actual reflection of what we are experiencing ourselves. So it's silent in that, we sometimes choose for it to be silent because of the vulnerability, because of the connotations that may be associated with it, and for perhaps a need to be presented and seen in a certain way.
Timely points, and I think that there's a couple that really resonate the most with me. One is the whole idea of how it's being presented, because it's so important to us to recognize that concept we learn in psychiatry psychology about the mirror. What we're seeing all too often may be remarkably different than
Mhm.
what we think others see or what I think our environment appreciates from us. And that's something I think all too often leads to this disconnect between how I feel internally about myself and what I think others consider of me. And that could certainly, I think, be a slippery slope toward low self-esteem, isolationism, and clinical depression. I'd like to ask you about that. But before I mentioned, I'll also just kind of comment this last point you made. I think is also very telling. Really, I think the issue. I call it resilience. What do you use then to get out of that, and what can you use to bounce back? And I
Mhm.
want to make sure we lead the artists with the considerations that young African American men probably are showing some degree of resilience in many areas, yet the stresses that they're exposed to may still be overwhelming the defense mechanisms and resistance strategies that they actually already have. So I like to
Mhm.
empower them by saying you're doing really well in what you are trying to do, and it just may be too much. Interesting your thoughts in both those areas.
Yeah, so two great questions. The second, I want to definitely clarify a little bit more, but I'll definitely answer the first because I really think that resilience is a critical component to be considered. And actually, I'm going to take a step back just really briefly to just say that sometimes people are not even aware that they are experiencing stress. So, it's this adage of in order to kind of tackle the monster, you have to be able to name the monster, you have to know what the monster is. So there are telltale signs sometimes that we are anxious, such as perspiration, rapid heartbeat, sometimes it's grimacing, tightening a fist. There are lots of times that we are experiencing these symptoms without knowing that they are actually symptoms. Sometimes I know when I'm in church with my wife, I might be like patting my leg like this, and she'll kind of grab it and say like, "Calm down." I'm like, "Oh, I wasn't even really aware of that." Probably a sign that it's not restless leg syndrome, but it's definitely a sign that, hey, maybe let me check in for a moment. What am I feeling anxious about? Oh, I forgot to kind of take care of this at home. I forgot to take care of this at work, et cetera. And so unconsciously, I'm thinking about that. So when we talk about resilience, we talk about our ability to really be able to persevere, to be able to overcome, to be able to thrive, and to be able to navigate some of the adversities and obstacles that we may face. So when we face stress, I think one of the ways that we be resilient is by naming it and by actually embracing it as a normal part. If we are of just of our experience, if we are experiencing stress, it is our body's way of communicating that something is going on. So it's actually a good thing, but when it's in excess or it's gone on too prolonged, well, that's when it can kind of have more negative meanings to it. So when we talk about resilience, it's the ability to be able to, in the face of stressors, especially young men. When we think about gun violence, we think about just the climate of the country. We talk about just a lot of the ups and downs that we experience in life, whether it's just personal life, with parents or siblings, the demands of education, or demands of our jobs, friends. Wearing multiple hats, multiple roles can be very difficult. And so the calling upon positive resources and things that we have to be able to navigate that and to be able to manage and cope with the stress is absolutely critical. And it helps us to be more resilient. So those can be things like spending time, in spiritual beliefs, or perhaps they could be working out. These things allows us to, in situations where we cannot necessarily control, that may contribute to the stress that we experience, it allows us to be able to cope and to manage it. And when we're able to cope and manage them in adaptive and effective ways, not the maladaptive or ineffective ways. Some of those are like smoking, sometimes the use of substances, et cetera. Those things can actually counteract our resilience and actually cause us to crash and burn. But when we're using healthier means, and there are a myriad of them, we are able to, over the long haul, because this is a marathon, right? Life is definitely not just a quick sprint, it's the long haul. We are able to be able to manage whatever comes our way in an effective, healthier way as best as we are able. It's not to say that we can eliminate stress, but it means that we can cope with it, manage it, and in some cases, walk hand by hand with it. But to be able to monitor it, maybe suppress it, lessen it, and not allow it to have those deleterious effects on ourselves, both physically, psychologically, and somatically. The second question, though, can you remind me what that question was, my dear brother?
Well, I was also asking about this issue that young black men probably do have some resiliency strategies already in place.
Yes.
You hit on a few minutes ago. Some I think are active and proactive. Some is going to church, or some is having some friends you can kind of let your hair down around. For some, as you
Mhm.
point out correctly, it may be maladaptive. It may be alcohol or substances, things that may be counterproductive towards you. But I think that part of our role has to be to point out to young men that they probably are doing some things already to counter what many would argue across the world, across our society, are overwhelming external stresses in the lives of young black men. So acknowledging that, I think, is helpful. That's why for me, and maybe you as well, all too often when I get a young black man in my office behind closed doors, he's a totally different person. I mean, all of a
Mhm.
sudden, a lot of the bravado is gone. All of a sudden, he uses regular King English, and all of a sudden, he's just kind of addressing and sharing his vulnerabilities and his emotional limitations and deficits, just like everybody else does. But boy, you can't show that sign or I perceive weakness when you're outside. So that's one role that I think everyone could do. But we as Black professionals in psychology and psychiatry, I would hope may be more akin to doing it. Your introduction says that you address individuals in a culturally relevant fashion. To me, this is the
Mhm.
epitome of being culturally relevant. How we understand young black men, and then can begin a dialogue that can be helpful.
Yes, absolutely. Brother Dr. Bailey. I think being able to identify again what those are, as a psychologist, I'm a therapist as well, right? So even having therapy can be very helpful and very adaptive. being able to participate in these spaces sometimes. I really love the example that you shared about in private. And that was kind of the question you started with, and you just shared a really good example of that. When they're maybe in your office or in another space, it's more easier to be vulnerable and more safer. And so therefore, the level of stress can be communicated. It can be it allows us to be able to open ourselves up for support and to be, to kind of proverbially lean on the shield in terms of alpha, but ultimately to be able to kind of lean on the support of those that are around us, individuals who we may deem to be and feel to be safe. So when we think about like the political climate, when we think about just all of the demands that as Black men that we face, it ebbs and flows. There are some moments that are more taxing than others. And so when we are encountering kind of what we call the perfect storm, kind of the constellation of all of these issues at the same time, identifying what are those healthy things that we can use and call upon proactively, as you also mentioned, but also as an intervention to be able to help us to be able to manage them. So what I charge brothers to do always is to absolutely make sure that we are aware of what are our healthy coping skills, what are some healthy things that we can do. For me, that might be spending some time in scripture and in the word, talking to a friend, you know, pushing out a few weights, at the gym or boxing. Those are ways for me to be able to release some of that stress, even some of that frustration that may come from the demands of being a provider as a father, protecting my daughter, from, knuckleheads and things that may be going on. But then also, just even driving. The other day I was driving and, it was at night, everything was cool, I had no legal issues whatsoever. But there was two police cars that kind of pulled and were kind of following me. Stress levels went up, right? So in that particular instance, I was able to utilize to be alert. I had to notify my wife, let her know, hey, not sure what's going on, but just kind of keep an eye out to make sure that everything's okay, and to engage in some diaphragmatic breathing, so some deep breathing exercises in that moment, so that I did not appear stressed. It's a nuanced complication here, because in this instance, I did not want to present, if they were to pull me over, as stressed, because then they may perceive that as hiding something or something going on, and that can trigger other things. So in that moment, I wanted to keep my stress level manageable, be able to understand and appreciate that I was experiencing it, but not let it overtake me so that it could potentially have me in a dangerous situation. So when we think about just safety, violence in different environments, in different communities, the demands of life, the responsibilities that we have, the expectations. I have a student who I supervised, and he saw an individual, a Black man in session cry, and it really alarmed him. And he was like, I don't know why it really had that effect on me. And so we processed that and we talked about that to understand it's a human emotion. It's a human feeling, but sometimes society can condition us, paint us out in a particular way that we are not. And so I think it's important that we humanize ourselves to be able to experience those things in a safe way, and to identify proactively what are some strategies that work for you. What are some things that you can call upon in those moments of stress that you don't have to really think about, that you're already accustomed to and used to and you're able to do. And in the moment, being able to use those things obviously will have some pretty positive effects as well.
Well said, timely, I think very astute. And the reality is these are exactly, I think, some of the key, what I call, nuclear issues for us, I think, in our community. Because all too often, if you don't manage stress well, for a young Black
Mhm.
man, it's not just about, health and lack of health or morbidity. It could be about mortality. I mean, the
Yeah,
bad decisions, those things you mentioned about the police stopping you, how you
absolutely.
handle, how you respond, means a lot. So no, we wait till we get to the end. I'll give everybody kind of a minute or two to kind of summarize. But I know, again, I thank you, brother, for jumping on. Although it's his birthday, everybody, and his wife's taking him out to dinner and all that kind of good stuff. So let me give you 2 minutes to kind of summarize, share your thoughts. Please give your contact information. I give Jeff Sterling a tremendous credit for really building this program the last
Yeah,
4 or 5 years. And it's actually a way for networking to take place. Not just my potential patients come to you from your local area, but also nationally. But also, I find other professionals call me
absolutely.
after they listen to these shows, and it creates, I think, a network for all of us as those who are interested, whether you're Black or not. If you're interested in taking care of young African American males with the stressful difficulties of our society, we should share ideas of what works going forward. So we give you 2 minutes to summarize, and we're gonna let you go.
All right, I appreciate that, brother. Thank you. Early happy birthday. Tomorrow's my birthday, and so I have another engagement an annual event that me and my wife goes to, and so wanted to make sure that I was definitely here. And thank you for allowing me to be here to be able to serve in this capacity. Thank you, brother Dr. Sterling, as well, for the opportunity to speak as well. I'll try to be very brief in my summary. Stress is a normal. It's a normal experience. It's a normal emotion. It's a physiological response to typically an internal or an external situation or circumstance. It's our way to adapt to it in moderation. And when we are aware of it, it can be healthy because it clues us to signs that, hey, there's something going on and there's something that you maybe need to pay attention to or take action on. In excess amounts or for prolonged periods of time, that stress can turn into other things. Even in its, and even in extreme cases, it may even one of the manifestations of that might be anxiety, like a generalized anxiety disorder, or a stress response, acute stress disorder, and even a trauma or PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And so, with all of those things, we have to develop healthier ways to be able to manage the stress because we can't stop it. We can't stop life. The earth is going to keep on spinning. But there are things that we can do proactively, such as a healthy, adaptive things, working out, exercise. You
So
search
Mike,
inside
he's
yourself
next.
and kind of determine for yourself what might actually be some things that you think are healthy, that promote wellness, that can actually manage the stress, and also try to be mindful of the things that work against those healthy things that could actually make the stress worse. Big example: alcohol. Alcohol can sometimes take your mind off things in the moment, but it can actually cause more stress later on if you have a hangover or things like that. So you need to be dehydrated. Now the body is under physical stress, etc. Whether there are the climate as Black men that we face in our society, no matter what those challenges may be in the workplace, in our families, even the individual fights and challenges we have within ourselves, stress is inevitable. It's really about how do we manage them? How do we mitigate the things also that can cause us stressors? But how do we also humanize ourselves to admit that it's not a private thing? It's something that every living being experiences, every living being, including plants, right? Plants can get stressed if they're flexed too much. And so to be able to own that, to be able to truly appreciate that, embrace that, to be aware of the signs that you are experiencing stress is incredibly important, and to just have the confidence to be able to, over the long haul, use those adaptive coping skills to be able to manage it. That all promotes resilience. That all promotes the ability to be able to continue to persevere through life and the challenges and obstacles as Black men that we will face.
Dr. Humphrey, superstar status from superstar ideas,
My
tremendous,
brother,
I
my
think,
brother.
timely and pointed. The reality is, I think, whether you're in New Orleans where I am now or Houston where I'm from, brothers are brothers. And whether they're alphas or not, but
Absolutely.
especially brothers in our fraternity, struggle with these issues. And I think I think, our leadership, our clinical, I think, engagement, and some level, I think, of professional expertise so they can feel like they're getting optimal care and interventional strategy. So thank you so much. Appreciate you.
You're most welcome.
Timely.
Real
Go
quick, I
ahead.
also know that you said just to drop information because, like, to your point, like a lot of professionals, I think that all of us can use some support, somebody to talk to, some bounce some ideas off of. So I will give you my website. The easiest one is my personal website, which could take you to my actual practice that I run. Is drbrianhumphrey.com. So it's www. Doctor D as in David, R as in Romeo, Brian, Brian, last name Humphrey, H as in Henry, U as an umbrella, M as in Mary, P as in Paul, HRE as in Edward, Y.com. All one, no periods, nothing in between. That'll take you to my personal page, and from there you can find my practice page. And we have different links and things to be able to give you some coping skills and some strategies. And also, if you want to reach me directly, you can reach me through that avenue as well.
Outstanding.
All right.
Have a good evening.
You
Happy
too, my
birthday
brother. Take
early.
care. I
Tell your wife
appreciate that,
thank
my
you
brother.
for giving us 20 minutes. We appreciate it.
It is my honor. Thank you, brother.
All right, take care. So Dr. Brian Humphrey, a psychologist, doing really high quality work, I think, in our community. I'm excited. And tonight we have a psychologist, a Black emergency medicine doctor, who's a psychiatrist, in my opinion, who's up next, an African American young doctor, resident psychiatry, who'll go third. So let's move to, I think, our second panelist for today, Thursday, the 21st of August, Dr. Michael Okonkwo. Dr. Okonkwo actually knocked on my door 4 or 5 years ago. He was a second year resident at LSU School of Medicine, and just has, in my opinion, kind of blown the doors off what the concept could be in residency when you're not a psychiatry resident, whether you're LSU or any other place in the country, but addressing psychological themes within the community. I'll let him talk a fair amount tonight about some work that he's done, I think, with young men in New Orleans in his past program, but also some work that he's doing, I think, now in Houston in his new role as an emergency medicine attending at his new hospital. I also want him to talk a little bit tonight about writing, because one thing I've taken a little bit of pride in is identifying young guys like him and Kaylin Pettis, who's coming on next, and really try to engage them. I think what I like to have done early in my career in pushing what I call it going all the way to the touchdown. Have an idea, think it through, but reduce it to writing and publish your thoughts. We're in a world now where this isn't just a big issue for academics, but I think for the soul of our society, that people who look like us have to really document and acknowledge what our current present is, because at some point this will be our history, and we want to, I think, be the ones articulating and providing authorship for our history. One of my pet peeves in the mentorship world for African American academics like myself. That being said, Dr. Concro, well, I call Dr. Oko because I misspelled his name a good bit, but a good guy, a good friend of mine. I think that your work is stellar, and I want to give you a chance to kind of get up and go into a little bit about yourself as we get started. And I want you to move right on into this issue of what you do with the kids down in New Orleans. And I love the theme that we kind of left Brian Humphrey with, the issue of resilience, because I do think the theme for tonight's discussion has to address that young Black men are doing some good things already. And we've got to be part of the voice saying that and saying it loudly from the top of a mountaintop, because all too often, whatever the individual may be, whether it's the media or otherwise, some people may only hear the negative messages and negative images and not recognize some of the good work that's already being done. But we probably could be helpful as mental health professionals in targeting and tailoring and directing that work in more positive and proactive direction. Dr. Michael Oko, you're up. We need volume. Yeah, I can't hear you. We need volume. Is it just me? I'm asking our IT support. Mr. Holly?
No, he needs to try it now. Try the audio now. He's muted or audio.
I can hear you, and I'm trying to hear Dr. Oko. Dr. Oko, can you speak up?
Check your audio, Dr. Oko. May need to go out and come back in. He's going out to come back in. Maybe try the next panel until he come on.
Yeah, why don't we do this? Why don't I switch? I'll go to interview Dr. Kaylin Pettis while Brother Holly's working on Brother Oko's volume. But the Pettis, alphas have to be amenable and got to be moving the punches. So how you doing, young fella?
Doing well. How about yourself, Dr. Bailey?
Oh, good. It's good. So I met this young brother, I think, at the Black Scotch America meeting in Atlanta last March, and he's been on fire himself. An outstanding program, doing residency. I, like you, was an African resident in a large program 30 years ago. That by itself can be a challenge, but doing good work. I want you to tell the group a little bit about the work you're doing, a bit about being an African resident. I don't think that there's many other persons of your background, like when I was in residency. Sometimes there's a sense, I think, of feeling a bit lonely and needing, I think, some support in those settings, but also a bit about what you think about your future, what some of the challenges that you'd like to pursue as a future African-American psychiatrist in your community. Dr. Pettis.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bailey. A little bit about me. Like you said, I'm a resident at the Mayo Clinic, but I'm interested in doing 2 fellowships, one in child adolescent psychiatry and one in forensic psychiatry. It's quite interesting when you're one of the few people that look like you within those programs. But one thing that I do find a lot of strength in is the fact of the legacy of history that I have when it comes to my family. My grandmother integrated schools back in the 50s and 60s. And so if she can endure those different things, navigating this aspect, is pennies on the dollar compared to the things that she's went through and how she's navigated with these things. And then to your other point about things I'm doing currently right now, I'm deeply involved in clinician education. So figuring out how can we teach younger residents about different things when it comes to being a good psychiatrist, but also different things that we can be thoughtful about when it comes to our pharmacological and the ways we approach our patients. Other things I'm doing, as you know, is research, doing a lot of different research with a lot of different people on a vast number of topics. Some of those are gun violence. I'm also doing a project right now looking at the EMTALA laws and the ERPOs, which are pretty much our extreme risk protection orders. So pretty much basically, if you come into the emergency department with increased, suicide ideation or homicidal ideation with access to guns, we have to talk about how can we keep ourselves safe and how we can keep other people safe as well. And then lastly, a couple of different things that I enjoy. I am very heavily in mentoring. I work closely with this organization, I Am Able, which I've been working with since I was in medical school. And so pretty much this organization works with helping underrepresented minorities understand the barriers and how to get to medical school, but not only not how to get to medical school, but how can we support them through medical school and navigate them and kind of give them a little bit more perspective and how to manage the stress of becoming a doctor and being a doctor when it comes to all forms of these different avenues. Well, I am just going to kind of talk about some things. I don't know where Dr. Bailey went on the call, but I want to be respectful of the people who are watching's times about kind of navigating stress at. Oh,
Even something as simple as this, keeping your assets strong. But today's show. This is our NBC priority pie chart. Big red part, you can see he's the biggest loser. Because this is NBC, biggest loser network. I thought it was going to be a moment.
just want to make sure. But a couple of different things that I want to talk about when it comes to stress is how complex the stressors are for young African American males and how important community is when it comes to young African American males. I think, the stresses for the African American people have been happening for quite a long time. But I think when we
So
talk
I got
about our
pushed
youth, I
off.
think they're,
Yeah, I'm
oh,
back. I heard you, so I got pushed off a little bit. First of all, I love the comments in regards to linking your family history to your present status. And with family history, we can often understand, I love your point, many of the trials and tribulations and struggles that very high quality family members like you've had have gone through. So in that regard, it does put us in a perspective. I think you stated very articulately that the problems we're dealing with now may be minor, but what our parents and grandparents and the like, other relatives had to do in the past. And that should motivate us, as the sun is motivating you, to really move forward and really work through some of the obstacles that will befuddle you, trying to fight through this challenge and this marathon obstacle course, I call it, trying to become a high quality African American professional in a setting where very often much of the societal barometers are adverse to our patient population. So I think you're in a good area.
thank you, Dr. Bailey. One of the things I was talking about is how unique the young African American experience is right now. I think when I was young, around, the age of 17, 18, I was able to at least know you can go to college, get a job, and kind of navigate these different aspects. But I think one thing that we don't really talk about is the lack of hope when it comes to the young generation, when it comes to opportunities and things like that. Coming from growing up, 16, 15, 14, and navigating through a global pandemic, seeing the different changes, how that's happened to society, and now kind of looking at what is going to be beneficial to me and how can I, have enough money to support my family. A lot of these questions are what the what Gen Z are asking and kind of raising. And I think there's a disconnect between a lot of times, we're playing by these old games that we've been able to navigate through, but the world is so different now with the invention of social media, with the invention of AI, and a lot of these other different interventions. And so, because of that, it's kind of this huge disconnect about okay, how can I end up doing something that's going to be beneficial? But without that hope, without that future orientation, you really are, being juxtaposed. You're really just being surrounded by a lot of different stress with no way out or no seemingly way out. And I think one of the hugest ways to be able to combat that is through mentorship and community. I think about even when I joined the fraternity back in fall 14, I found a huge community, but a lot of brothers pushing me to do better, pushing me, hey, you have potential. Here's how you do a lot of these different things. And even now within this space, I'm still able to find mentorship to be able to navigate these new challenges of being a resident, and how can I end up navigating these things as a psychiatrist board certified in a lot of these different aspects. But a lot of times our youth don't have that positivity when it comes to these different things. And then I just kind of want to just jump to another different aspect, because one of my favorite questions that I love getting as a psychiatrist talking to young men is, why would I talk about my problems? Therapy. Why would I go to therapy? It's not going to change my problems. It's not going to change anything that I'm going through. So what's the point of doing that? And I think one of the big things is kind of missed is that how relevant perspective is, how relevant it is to be able to kind of have somebody to rethink about how your situation is and find ways that you can end up, building that resilience, but be able to navigate those issues as well. But one thing that I also want to talk about is not just the talking, it's the talking within the relationship. One thing that we know as psychiatrists is a therapeutic relationship is one of the most important things that you can have between you and your patient when it comes to allowing you to speak into their lives and give them recommendations that they're going to follow up on. And I think we have to think about the same thing in the youth, because you can keep, talking to people about all the things they should and could do. But if you don't have that relationship with them, if they don't feel like you care about them, they're just going to kind of consider these words as, oh, he's being condescending. Oh, they're just saying all these other different things, but they really don't care about me. So I think when it comes to our approaches of how we approach the youth from a community standpoint, how do we reduce a lot of gun violence from a community standpoint, we have to start building these relationships with people, because people know when you care about them, and people know when you're trying to help them when it comes to navigating these ideas and not just talking down to them.
People absolutely know if you're credible and authentic. And I think that one of the challenges, I think, for persons of all backgrounds providing care, diagnosis, and assessment of young African males is all too often they misunderstand or misbelieve that the young African male doesn't know what they think or feel, and that's to their detriment. Young people very often can see through you like a cheap suit, so to speak, and recognize whether you're being authentic, whether you're being honest and earnest, whether you're giving them the same level of advice and information and care and compassion that you give somebody else. They pick up a lot of subtle signs at times that I think are missed in other regards. Huge issues, I think, going forward. So the reality is that authenticity really matters. And I like to often say you don't have to be Black or male to understand and convey that to young Black males, but you have to be willing to be culturally competent, as we said with the last speaker, to do so. So I think you're on the right track in 100% in that regard. I'm also interested in whether in the space you're in, are you finding more challenges as a young person? Because I trained in psychiatry 30 years ago. A lot of challenges then, probably some racism, probably some discriminatory bias, probably some misunderstanding of how I communicated. Those challenges make it very difficult to get through the regular process of learning psychiatry and all these other kind of issues. What's been your space in that setting?
I've been just involving myself with a lot of supervision and trying to figure out ways to approach these situations. I think that in the society that we live in right now, a lot of these abrasive situations are unavoidable. But I think how you kind of conceptualize them and how you interact with them really help to change how much you take home at the end of the day. One of my big things that I always do is kind of talk to a few of my friends and a lot of my frat brothers about the difficulties when it comes to navigating these fields and being able to kind of, let your hair down in a sense and kind of talk about how you've been trying to navigate these different issues. Other things I've been able to do is really try different avenues and different ways of communication and figuring out which one is kind of landing. I think a big thing that's been helpful to me as far as, removing myself from a lot of situations is that, when you have been in a lot of these different stressful situations, you really get really good pattern recognition when it comes to seeing a lot of the different, I say, I'll say signs when it comes to if you are somebody else are about to have a really bad interaction. And so from that, I've been able to kind of prevent a lot of these acute blowups just from kind of understanding, how people are perceiving me, but then reacting in a way to where I can just like, okay, this may not be a really good interaction. So sometimes less is more. And I think another thing I want to speak to about is kind of like a lot of times when you're going through a lot of these different strenuous and rigorous, trainings when it comes to residency, medical school, or even just college. I think there's a flip side of mentorship that's not really talked about. I think it's different when you have young Black men looking up to you and you're saying, "Oh, I want to be like you," and you're talking to them and giving them mentorship. But that also gives you that motivation that, hey, someone's coming behind me and I have to make sure that I'm doing the things that I need to do to, number one, take care of myself, and number two, make sure that I'm in a space where I can take care of my patients as well. And then lastly, I go to therapy every week just to be able to kind of have that free space to talk about a lot of these different things, because a lot of times you have these days, especially within the society and the social context that we're living in right now, where every time you pick up your phone is something new and something that can be potentially very stressful to you. Having that space to just talk about these things, that space to talk about how that really upset me in that comment, but also thinking of new ways to engage within that therapy space has been beneficial to me as well. But lastly, I want to talk about the importance of building relationships, even among non-Black people or non-minority people within these different spaces. I think it's important to always kind of create these relationships, because that's how you can also maintain another sense of safety, just having people looking out for you and protecting you within these spaces as well.
Well, time to put it mildly. I think the reality is trying to understand and help them understand you, us, from different backgrounds means a lot. Really timely, outstanding work. Very proud of you, young brother. These are exactly the kind of things you have to do to kind of get off to a good start in a career, and it helps you have kind of successes that I think will help you kind of going forward. You get the kind of the feedback, positive feedback that it takes to stay in a business. I hate how many people we lose in our profession. People we lose Black men. So all outstanding. Let me give you these 2 minutes to give you like your final 2 minutes of comments before we go to Dr. Oko.
Okay. Finally, just in closing, I want to say it's really important for us to really start building communities when it comes to young Black men, but people just in general. I think that, now within this capitalism rise and super rise right now, we have gotten to the point where there's a lot of individualism that's around. And when you're individual, when you practice individualism, you become socially isolated. And it's always easier to take down an island than a community. So I think it's also to be mindful of that. I think it's also, I didn't really mention it, but it's also to be mindful of the particular specifics of a lot of Black men when it comes to stress. And one of those things is the transition from child to villain around the age of 12 to 14. And that's one thing that Black men end up going through, because they end up, when they become that age, they see, other people can see them as a threat. And that does something to a lot of their self-identity and their identity formation when it comes to a lot of these things as well. And then lastly, I just want to, encourage people to to engage in mentorship wherever it is. Having that older brother talk to you about their experiences has always been helpful to me and always gave me perspective, even as when I was a young brother, a neo coming in alpha. And so one thing that I have really appreciated was, creating those relationships between the older generation and the younger generation. A lot of times you hear this disconnect between them, but we both are two sides of the same coin, and we really need to integrate ourselves with the wisdom and the raw youth that we can end up coming together, be able to change and transform our communities. Lastly, I just have to shout out my home chapter, Nueda. I have to shout out Alpha Memphis, and I have to shout out ATA as well. A lot of those good brothers have really empowered me and really motivated me to be in the position I am. And then lastly, talking about correspondence, if you want to reach out to me, please email me in my personal email, kaylin.pettis@gmail.com. That is CAYLON period PETTIS@gmail.com. Dr. Bailey, it was an immense pleasure to be on this call, and I'm so happy to be a part of this.
I'll just go ahead and move forward. Sorry about the technical issues earlier. Just want to clarify if those can hear me. Yes.
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay. Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Belly, for having me, and also thank you, Dr. Sterling, also for having me as well. This is a great conversation. Stress is a concept that I constantly think about, one I'm constantly trying to get better at, and one in which I'm not equipped to actually give anyone objective guidance because I'm still working through it myself. But my history, which stress in an academic space, started in residency. I did a lot of research on stress as related to Black male youth. It was a very it was a great experience
Tim, do we
for
have
me.
Dr. Mike Oko?
Yes, I'm on. I'm on currently. Yes, I'm on. I'm on, Dr. Belly. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So it was a great experience for me. I was able to form multiple partnerships in the city of New Orleans. Started grassroots
Brother Mike
organizations.
Oko, if you're on, I'm gonna give you the mic. I can't hear you. And I'm asking Tim Holly in the background if you're on, because I want you to have a chance to give your presentation.
I'm sorry. Do you all hear me? I'm sorry. Hello,
Yes,
Dr.
we hear
Belly.
you. We hear you loud and clear.
Tim, do we have brother Dr. Mike Oko?
Yes.
Or we just not have any volume on him?
Yes. I'm speaking, Dr. Belly. I want to make sure. Am I heard? I'm sorry. Brother Sterling, do you hear me?
Yes, we hear you. Please continue.
Okay. Okay. Sorry. Yeah. So it started in New Orleans. I was able to partner with multiple organizations in the city, start grassroots organizations in which we use basketball to teach resilience to youth. But when it comes to coping skills in a practical sense, one of the things that I would recommend is really educating oneself on the source of stress. To your point, Dr. Pettis, you spoke about wisdom. And one of the things that I like to think about, and I actually encourage youth, is to understand that there's a source of stress. And one of the things that I encourage is actually a device that I have here. It's called the feelings wheel. This is a compilation of over 100 different feelings that one could experience. And the importance of this is Black men is oftentimes we don't have the words to actually characterize how we feel, which is actually the building block of our stress. And so the feelings wheel is a device that allows you to place a definition to how you feel. You can clarify your thoughts, and then you can slowly begin to uncover what the source of those stresses are to you, respectively. And you can come to find a lot of intra and interpersonal aspects that builds towards the stress that you have. So I highly encourage it. I think it's a great tool to use. For me, literacy was a big thing as I navigated my stress, as I continue to navigate my stress, and being able to put a term to it actually empowers me to have some sort of pathway moving forward for resolution. And another thing that I like to think about when it comes to stress managing, one that I would encourage youth, is to understand that our strength is actually powerless. And what I mean by that is understanding that the things that we feel, which lead to our stress, come from a toxic underlying relationship with our sense of control. And our sense of control is built by our impression of what our strength is to control that respective stressor or the source of it. But coming to terms and accepting that reality of having a lack of power and understanding that our strength is powerless leads me, and I would encourage you to lead you to a path to appreciating a walk with faith. and understanding that God's power is actually the source of our strength that allows us to tolerate and to navigate all the circumstances of life. And I think it's very formidable. I think it's realistic. I think I find it to be of wisdom. And what it actually does is it builds resilience. It builds a source of control, right, that can help you navigate the circumstances that you are in. So just to summarize, the two big things that I advocate for when it comes to the concept of stress and actually having skills to navigate and to negotiate that stress is A, understanding what the source of your stress is. Oftentimes, a myriad of things can come into the minds of Black male. We deal with a lot of things, with work and without pursuit of greatness. A lot of things that kind of cloud our sense of efficacy. And so, being able to place a term to how you feel is a positive step forward towards actually overcoming the stressor. And B, additionally, is understanding that your strength is actually powerless. And so it paves way and it gives opportunity for us to have a walk with faith as we face life and we face anticipated stressors. Thank you.
Your comments are very well received, and I appreciate the insight that you're giving. I love that you're offering a perspective as a young man. And I want you to just end this by coming full circle with us and just tell me what you look forward to in your future, how you're going to be proactive as well as reactive, how you're going to be empowered and not depressed based on the stresses that are omnipresent in this world and in your life and in your circumstance. And with that, we'll just call it a leaving. But I think really appreciate you and what you've done.
Yes. Educating myself on how I feel, what the source of my stress is, and how I can overcome that, and learning and being educated on the tools that are already present for me to utilize in order to overcome that source of stress. And for me, it's a walk with faith. So that's my proactive approach in terms of being able to, anticipate battles with stressors. And in terms of reacting to stress, because, let's face it, we're all imperfect. Certainly I am. That's where the feelings will in particular comes into play. Able to identify what it is that you actually feel, to clarify it to a point to where you can understand both the interpersonal and the interpersonal factors within it.
Well, that's where we're going to leave it. We look forward to your leadership. And I think that the mindset and mentality that you brought forward is exactly what we hope to have providing us stewardship moving forward. With that being said, we want everyone here to come back and visit with us again next month, and we'll get these technical issues worked out. And as always, thank you for joining us. God bless and good night.
Thank you.